Hello and welcome to Business Edition. In this program, we find out what is being done to increase investment interest into the country by ensuring investment projects, particularly in the energy sector. My name is Yvonne Msemembo saying welcome to Business Edition. With me right now, I have John Lentane, who's the Chief Underwriting Officer of Africa Trade Insurance Agency, ATI. Welcome to the program. Let's start off by looking at ATI. Who exactly are you and what do you do in these sectors that you're particularly working in? Energy, infrastructure, among the sectors that ATI is insuring insurance services in.
ATI is a multilateral institution. That means we're owned by our member governments. We sit effectively as a supranational above states. Our main shareholders are African governments. We have 12 shareholders, and recently we've had Ethiopia join us and Zimbabwe, and we're very hopeful that Cote d'Ivoire will join us as well. Tanzania was actually one of the founding member states of ATI with a $19 million investment that was made in 2001. We also have other shareholders such as the African Development Bank. Now, whilst we're called an insurance agency, from the purposes of viewers watching, actually the interesting thing about what we do is it's, in many instances, it's most closely akin to a guarantee. And in particular, we're focused on mitigating perceived or real political risks in our member countries or payment risks. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the role of insurance companies, multilateral agencies like ATI, and indeed private insurers, because there are some who operate in this space, isn't very well known about in the member countries. It's extremely well known about in the international financial circles. You cannot invest in many of our member countries, particularly big ticket investments, without purchasing non-payment insurance policies or political risk insurance policies. So international investors know about what we do, but unfortunately, or fortunately, it's not that well known about in all of our member countries. And that's one of the reasons that we've come to Tanzania this week, is to better explain to the business and financial and government community exactly what ATI does and how we can unlock investments.
Why do you think that not so much is being done in terms of fostering relations between the governments in these African countries? What are the challenges that you think have contributed to this situation?
In terms of the knowledge of how we work,
yes.
The interesting thing is historically insurers in this space, multilateral insurers such as ourselves, and even private insurers, have always wanted to stay silent. In a way, we're sort of partially responsible for that, because historically, we as an agency, and indeed private insurers who can do what we do in certain sectors, have been reluctant to disclose their presence. So generally, you'll have a lender, such as a bank, making a loan to an entity, which may be a Tanzanian government, it may be a sub-sovereign entity, or it may be a private entity. Now, the bank, particularly if it's an international bank, is concerned about the credit risk, or even if it's not concerned about the credit risk, it has to put heavy capital charges against those loans because these are sub-investment grade borrowers. And the insurer will sit behind that, and the insurer steps in the event that there's a default. But historically, the insurers were worried that if the risk party knew about the insurance, that would somehow increase their propensity to default, because they'd say to the lender, well, you're insured, so you don't need to worry. But I think as financial markets have evolved, in fact, particularly since 2007, it's become very penal for banks to lend to sub-investment grade borrowers. So it's just become an essential way of distributing this risk. And non-payment insurance is involved in a huge amount of inwards investment. So it's critical to that inwards investment. I think viewers might have heard of Sinosure, which is the Chinese state arm that insures these guarantees. So when you have a Chinese investment, it's often backed up, the payment risk of the local authority or whoever it is, the local the counterparty in Tanzania, would be backed up by the Chinese state. ATI can offer that exact product. We tend not to work with Chinese investors because they have it for the Chinese state, but we work a lot with international investors, and we're talking about financial institutions and equity investors as well.
Since establishing relations between these member countries, would you say they've seen increased investments into these member countries? How do you assess the situation right now when we look at investments in the particular sectors?
We've had a different impact in different member countries. So in some member countries, we've had an enormous an impact. And actually, two of Tanzania's neighbours, Uganda and Kenya, we've invested literally over $1 billion of investments over the years in those countries. We've been probably less influential in Tanzania, and that is one reason we're coming here to Tanzania to raise awareness, particularly actually at the government level in terms of what we do and how we can help. Effectively, we can step in and we can wrap the government's credit rating with our rating. And ATI is rated A by S&P, which makes us the second highest rated institution in Africa after the African Development Bank. Obviously, Tanzania itself is rated in the single B region, so we can have a transformational effect in unlocking investment for international investors who may be worried about credit risk, whether it's real or perceived.
Why do you think that you haven't had so much influence in Tanzania? When Tanzania is a country that's always saying investors are invited to invest in the energy sector, in infrastructure. So why do you think that this influence has not been as much as we'd expected it to be?
Truthfully, ultimately we don't decide on the investments. So we're passive. We receive investments from outside investors. So part of it is just the flow of investments, and that's obviously not within our control. But I think the other thing, and I've alluded to it, the key for us is that we get better recognition at the government level of what we can do. And to be fair, there is that recognition. It is growing. So we think particularly after an event like this, it's going to be hopefully quite transformational. And ultimately, we feel that we could really unlock hundreds of millions of investments into Tanzania, and particularly we think into the energy sector, because we think there's a real backlog there, and the critical backlog in unlocking private finance is mitigating the off-taker risk. And we're here to say that we have a potential solution for that.
What would you like from the government, and what does the government want from you to make sure that you do unlock this potential?
Fundamentally, it's about dialogue. So we recognise, as I say, that in the past we've been too silent. So this is not entirely us saying, look, it's a problem with the government. It's also us recognising that we need to be more open about our role and to educate the stakeholders, the key stakeholders in the government and the Ministry of Energy, if we're talking about power, the regulator. And we've been having really productive dialogues this week on exactly this subject. So I think we're really getting there. And actually, I think for us, a potential role model is Uganda, where in about 2007, 2008, they had a similar dialogue process. There it was with the World Bank. And as a result of that, there was a tripartite agreement. And as a result of that agreement, literally overnight, investments were unlocked. And it's been really interesting today listening to the speakers in the conference, because you've got a very consistent message from the private sector, from the financiers, from the equity investors, in fact from the legal as well. And they're all saying the single bottleneck to unlocking power in Tanzania is addressing this off-taker risk. And ATI is here, we're on the ground, we have an underwriter in Tanzania, so we have the tools to unlock this risk. And I really believe that with the understanding that we're generating at the government level, we hopefully in the next few months could be in a position to unlock literally real projects that are waiting for our policies to be ensured.
Welcome back to Business Edition, and now I have with me Tusekile Kibonde, who is the resident underwriter of ATI. Welcome to the program. And when we look at ATI in Tanzania, particularly in the energy sector, how do you assess the investment situation? We're looking at the risks that are involved in this sector. We know that the energy sector has been facing very, very many challenges over the past years. Measures have been taken to address the situation, but still it's a sector that is, facing a lot of challenges. So we look at ATI, what has been done maybe to make sure that this situation is improved and we see a lot more investment?
As ATI, we have, in fact, in the past, we have supported a number of transactions in the energy sector. For example, as we are one of the key solutions in order to unlock all these challenges which the energy sector are facing, we support either the lenders who wants to finance, maybe it could be an EPC contractor who's been contracted to rehabilitate a plant, or we also finance, it could be an equity investor who wants to come and invest in Tanzania. But now, in the past, what we've done, we've supported international lenders, where, for example, we took part in the syndication when we had a power crisis. We were a one solution which, as a silent player, we tried to support our economy in order to resolve the situation. So we supported the lenders, and as well we also took part in one of the rehabilitation of one of the plants in Mwanza. So basically, ATI provides solutions to it could be a contractor, it could be lenders. So for us as ATI, what we're trying to say is we're seeing a lot of potential here in Tanzania, based on the size of pipeline. When we talk of pipeline, this is what we are talking with. It could be equity investors who wants to come and invest in Tanzania, who have already engaged TANESCO, who have already engaged Minister of Energy. They're in discussion. They could be at a very initial stage, or some of them almost towards to the financial closure. For them to inject their capital, or even to their lenders to be comfortable that we are funding this project which is taking place in Tanzania, they need a solution. Either the requirement is to have a guarantee, and we all know we can't really load the government with an additional debt, because if the government issued guarantee, it means, of course, that means the government is going to increase its debt level, and which is, of course, based on the IMF, it reaches the IMF ceiling. So as what investors or even international lenders are looking at, they've seen an alternative solution where they're saying, instead of relying on seeking a government guarantee, then we'll look at having an A-rated institution, because an A-rated with a rating, it means ATI is able to pay to resolve a situation, and ATI being one of a member country is the Tanzania as a shareholder, so they know that ATI has a dialogue with the government, so the situation, should anything arise at any point in time, then the situation will be resolved. So we are, to unlock these challenges, we engage, we're always in dialogue with the equity investor, lenders, and give them various solutions which we can provide in order to give them a comfort of how they can invest. And ourselves, together with the government, with the other stakeholders in the energy, we try to come up with an agreement where we're able to support this investment into the country.
And what has been the response from the government? Is the government seeing that you are playing a key role in helping to unlock these solutions? Do they realize your potential yet?
The government have been very positive, and they've seen that we are one of the key solutions, because we know, for example, African Development Bank also issued the same kind of solution. But the government has also realized this is our very own. We can use our very own to attract investors, to assure these investors, yes, there are issues in the energy sector, but we can't give you a direct as a government guarantee, but you can use the ATI solution. So we are still in discussion, trying to make sure we add more value than what we've already done in the past. So we are in discussion to making sure that we assist the government to reach its targets, because in the next 2020, there is a target of achieving 5,000 megawatts. So we want to be a part of that. We really want to support. We can try so that the government achieves its target and be able, at the end of the day, improve the economy of Tanzania, because we know, for example, our government is really trying to make sure we become industrialists. And of course, we need power. So they have to, at the end of the day, they end up being, we have to make sure we help the energy sector, we facilitate investors, we offload the burden from the government in using the public funds, and allow investors invest in the sector.
And what about the investors themselves? Are they showing interest now? Have you been able to draw them to come invest in the country, in the energy sector? Because we see that the response has not been as big as we expected to be.
The investors, they're seeing potential. They're actually in discussion with the government in order to make sure they come up with you need a proper documentation, making sure that you've finalized all the requirements in order to invest in the energy sector. For example, I would say in Tanzania, as it is of now, we have a portfolio worth, just in the Tanzania, worth $1.2 billion. So this gives us comfort, means they've seen a potential, and they're working on it. They are trying to make sure that they meet all the key parameters which are required to invest in a country. And of course, before they reach a financial closure, meaning before they inject the fund or before the lender inject funds in the project, they will need a solution which says, okay, that we are ready to invest, but ATI, can you provide a support so that we start implementation? So this is something we're seeing. It's going to take, because we know energy project, they take a number of years. So we're going to see, once we all partner together with the government, we're going to see this is going to unlock all these investments, and then in the next few years, the situation may be a very different case compared to what we are now.
Where have you seen most impact? Maybe you can give us examples of the success stories.
Most of them are in the for example, in Kigoma, we're seeing a lot of potential. There's Mwanza, there's, in Singida. There are a lot of potential, and especially we're seeing a lot of solar projects in the renewable sector. There's some hydro, there's some gas-fired project. So we are seeing a lot, the way we look at it is we are seeing a lot of different alternatives instead of us relying on, say, hydro. So we are seeing a lot of projects where we can, say, provide power using solar. So that's another alternative instead of relying just on hydro. We're seeing, gas, wind. These are all in part of our pipeline. The way we look at it, it means in the next few years, Tanzania may have different sources of power. If we are able to unlock and support the investors, then we're seeing that we might get to where we're targeting to get, and we might be able, instead of relying on, for example, importing some of the power from our neighboring countries, we might be able to even sell out of Tanzania.
In the private sector in Tanzania, what sizes are we talking about, and what has been done by ATI to make sure that you draw the private sector to play a part in the development of the energy sector?
We start from the small up to the big size projects. For example, we have even a 2 megawatt project on our pipeline here in Tanzania. So we might look at the 2 megawatts project, 5 megawatts, 10 megawatts, 100 megawatts, or even 300 megawatts, because what we are here to provide solution to all kinds of projects. As long as, for us, if it's a priority for the country, if it's a priority for the Minister of Energy to undertake that project, and the investor requires our support, then we'll provide that support, provided it is a priority for the country.
What happens in the case of defaulting of payments?
If there are defaults of payment, then we come as a solution where we engage in dialogues. Basically, how does it work? We put together the stakeholders and say that we find means of how to resolve a default. Basically, we sit on the table, find out if it's a debt, how it can be restructured in such a way the cash flows allow it to sustain the debt. Or otherwise, we look for other alternatives. So our involvement is really to help as well. We come in as an intermediary as well, either between the lender or the investor, and try and find a solution. So if it's you're talking of debt with TANESCO, then we'll come and sit together with TANESCO and try and see how best we can resolve, or we also sit with the ministry, try how best we can resolve. So our involvement is really to try and minimize as much as possible default.
Government uses the services that are being able to be provided by ATI to make sure that we speed up the development of the economy, particularly in sectors such as the energy sector.
What we do, we engage in dialogues. We make sure that in fact, this whole week we've been in dialogues with all the stakeholders in the energy sector. We also try and make this kind of awareness. And then, of course, obviously, we have to keep on engaging in dialogues to make sure that we come up with a solution. And in fact, we even asked the government that which are the key priority projects for the country, so that ATI can come in and also support, so that we unlock, and then so that we keep on, so that in their targets is also kind of achieved.
Well, what in your views do you think that have slowed down or hindered this speedy, connection?
It's a process where we have to keep on having dialogues with various stakeholders, because also we have to understand the government really has to to be aware exactly how we provide that support. So we have to acknowledge that.
Do you think they didn't understand? They don't really understand who you are?
No, they do understand, but to make sure we go to the most technical bits so that we are able as well to support the way African Development Bank does or the World Bank does.
Apart from the energy sector, where else do you think Tanzania, you see the potential, where you think that insurance protection is necessary?
There's a lot of potential in infrastructure, especially in the construction industry, and actually been very active, either supporting the contractors, or it could be the lenders as well, because lenders are the biggest partners in Tanzania, because they're the one-stop solution where a company where we go and seek a solution, for example, to have access of funds. So we support the financial institutions. Their focus is, of course, for example, in the various sectors. The key ones which I've seen, which are in the past year, has been in the construction industry. We're seeing a lot of those coming in, and we're seeing a lot of projects being implemented. Could be in Mwanza. Road construction in Mwanza. Actually, the other day I saw one in Dodoma. So there are a number of projects which are coming in, and we're excited that, yes, everyone and most of the bank, they've realized they really need us to support, because they find that they need to enhance their capacity, they need to float some of the risks, and the only solution which is available is us. So we will support, for example, a contractor who wants to implement, taking access of, or wants to import some equipment and needs a financing, and either it could be the bank needs somebody else to share that risk, or the contractor doesn't have enough security. So we come in and buff in and support the lender.
Agriculture is an area that could have contribute a lot to the economic development, but it's being considered as a very risky sector. Is this something that HEI is looking into?
It is one of the sectors which has been considered as one of the risky, but for agriculture, we definitely have to support the lenders. For example, if a commercial bank is supporting agro-processing, we will definitely support them, and because what happens, we cannot read, if, for example, an association which has been set up, an agriculture association has been set up, there's a proper corporate kind of governance management, then there's a proper structure. It means if they're trying to access fund, then HEI can really come in and support. But we do not go to an individual basis. The reason is because it becomes to find the tracking. Is this really the support we're providing? Is it really adding any value addition to them? But if there's an association, then it's easy for us. Are we really adding value addition into the agriculture? Yes. So we support agribusiness. We support. In fact, we even support exporters. There was a floriculture company in Arusha. They're trying to access. They needed a cover to supply to the European buyer. And of course, when an exporter doesn't know their buyer, they're not too unsure whether will I be paid back my money. So they came and just to make sure that we are able to support them and they can access the foreign market. So we really support the agriculture business where they need to tap the foreign market. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the European, it can be just a cross-border. A Tanzanian wants to supply in Kenya and really wants to be very sure that the funds are going to be safe, the repayment, the company is going to repay back. So we support, of course, the companies, the exporters, yeah.
Tanzania business community, in realizing the importance of ensuring or protecting their investments, are they realizing this yet, do you think?
What I always tell them, Tanzanian businesses, you've insured your properties, you've insured everything, but you've not insured your receivables. For example, it could be a manufacturer who has a magnitude of buyers. It's most of the buyers, either you enter into they have to buy in cash basis, but in order to enhance your businesses, you have to provide other credit terms. So you sell to your buyers on credit term. Now, this is where HEI can come in. Sells on credit terms, then we can support them and ensure their portfolio of buyers who have bought on credit terms should any of those buyers default or delayed payments or goes bankrupt, then they know that they've covered their receivable from that company. So basically, it's to ensure your expected cash, which you've given on as a loan. So we really encourage businesses in Tanzania who enters into maybe credit terms agreement, who wants even to access supply credit. It could be a company wants to import equipment from China. And one of the terms they say, okay, you need to have a kind of a guarantee. We are the solution for them, because we'll back them once we know we have done our perimeter, done our review, of course. We'll back them and say yes, and issue that policy to a supplier in China, say yes, we are going to support this Tanzanian company in case if anything happens, there's a delay of payment or the company goes bankrupt or the default, then we're going to take that. Yes, so there's a lot of solutions for businesses here in Tanzania, locally as well. Yeah.
Well, that's it from me, Yvonne Mselembo. Until next week, same time, it's goodbye from Business Edition. Watch Capital Television on Zuku Decoder, Channel 51. Capital Television, your channel of choice.